Hello everyone, how are you doing? This is Paul Benbow, and today we're going to be looking at SketchUp and its integration with Google Earth. And we're also going to spend a few minutes looking at the plugin called Tools on Surface. So if you have a minute, I'm sure you'll enjoy this. What we're going to do is we're going to basically look at the Google Toolbar. The integration with Google Earth and SketchUp version 8 was really good. So on the Google Toolbar, the first one we're going to look at is Add Location. And we'll look at some other tools in a second, but basically we're going to pick on Add Location. And I'm going to go to the house that I grew up in, and I'm from Raleigh, so I was born at 4724 Lakemont Drive, and I keyed that in earlier, but you just key in the address, and it's pretty good about finding things. You can key in lat long if that's what you have as well. Then I'm going to simply say Select Region, and I'm going to get my bounding box, and I'm going to pull this box so it's... Actually, let me cancel that. I'm going to try to zoom in one click closer and then say Select Region. It will only get so close, so that was the max. It will only get so close, so that's just kind of is what it is. But it's amazing what it actually gives you. And I'm going to take a little more of this backyard, and then you'll see why in a second. And I'm going to say Grab. So what happens is this satellite image was placed into Google Earth or Google SketchUp. It actually comes into scale, so if I take my tape measure tool and I measure the house, for example, the house is probably 32 feet, and it's probably 53, 54 feet wide, 52 feet wide, so that's probably a pretty good number. So not only does it come into scale, but it also comes in with the axes. So for example, this solid green axis faces north, and the dotted green faces south. And when I was a kid, sure enough, the front of our house got the late afternoon sun. Of course, this is east and west. So this picture was probably taken sometime, in the morning because the shadow is being cast this way. A little piece of trivia for you. You can certainly zoom in, pretty good clarity from Google Earth. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to simply move my axes so I can draw my red-green axis, just make my life a little easier. And I'm just going to simply position that there on the corner of the roof. I'm going to say red is this way and green is that way. Now when I take my pencil tool, I want to sketch out the roof because I want to push-pull this up. So I'm going to simply go along here. That says it's 11 feet. Not sure why these numbers are coming up to be the 3 feet. To me in carpentry everything seems to always be 4 feet, 8 feet, numbers like that, but it just I'll go along with it. 13 feet, 5 feet, and across the front of the house probably 30 feet, and then to the back corner of the house probably 38 feet, and then as we go across here I'll just go ahead and grab that from that. 54 feet sounds about right. Oops. On the red axis. And then bam. So now we have our basic building footprint. And we're going to take and push-pull this up 14 feet. So we get a 14-foot height of our building. Some of the nice things you can do, for example, if I click on this face right here, I can say Add Photo Texture. And then I can actually benefit from the street view. So this is Google Earth as the van drove by my house, and we can actually take and look around. That is my house with the tree in the front yard. Looks like we need to do a little maintenance here on the old weeds, but anyway. So if I kind of zoom in a little bit, I can actually take a look and see that sure enough there is one window here, and I could grab this and put it on that. I can just show you that real quick. It's going to be a little off because of the tree in the way, but just kind of showing you what's possible. So you can kind of grab that like that, and then say grab. You can actually project that onto your SketchUp model. I'm not really interested in doing that at the moment, but I do think it's kind of cool that you can kind of look around and see what's going on in that area. Kind of how the lot falls off. There's a lot of information. The house is on a hill. Had some pretty good sledding down this hill as I was a kid. But anyway, so I did want to show you that that's kind of a nice feature, that you can get the front of buildings and you can actually apply it to the the structure. Don't have time to go into that today, but that might be another session for another day. A lot of good stuff. But now what I want to do is I want to simply take this and just put a roof on it. So I'm going to use my friend Instant Roof. And when I go to Instant Roof, I need to pick the gable walls. And so this right here is a gable. The roof is here, and that's a gable. So I'm going to pre-select those, Instant Roof, make roof, and I'm going to say create new. And just like we talked about last time, I'll just pick California Ranch because that's probably pretty close to what I need. But there's basically the roof of the building, and you know, why not add some why not add some shingles, because it's easy, right? So I'm going to go ahead and get some roofing, and then pop some shingles on my house. So okay, so now what's interesting about the Google Earth integration is this second button actually will toggle the terrain. And the toggling terrain is interesting because what's really happening under the hood of SketchUp is if I look at my layers, Google Earth will bring in two layers. It brings in a snapshot layer and a terrain layer. So if I simply toggle my terrain, I actually see, you know, how my terrain is falling off. And sure enough, as we saw from the street view, the lot does fall off pretty steeply this way, and the lot also falls off pretty steeply off the backyard. So to kind of give my house a little bit better representation of how it fits on the property, what I'd like to do is simply go under the house, and I'm going to triple click, and then I'm going to simply go into my move tool, and I'm going to go up the blue axis to where this high point of my building is actually on the, you know, just barely touching the property. And so what I'd like to do now, whoops, I forgot to include my roof component in that. So here we go. We do another move. Let's go up the blue axis. Much better. So now what I have is my house is kind of floating. So what I want to do is I want to add the crawl space. You know, when I was a kid, we had a basement. So I'm going to simply click here, and I'm going to use my push-pull tool. I'm going to tap my control key and actually add some space to that. And I could have just used my push-pull tool without it. But see what it gives me? It gives me that line right there of kind of, you know, demarking where the first floor finished elevation might be and where the second floor might start, which could come in handy sometimes to have that, and it's easy enough to delete the lines. So now what I need to do is I need to simply, you know, use intersecting faces to kind of clean this up. So I'm going to simply pre-select everything with a crossing window, make that smaller, and then I'm going to right click and say intersecting faces, you know, with selection. And after I do that, what I have is that this face now is separated from that face. See that? So now I can take my eraser tool and I can simply erase, and I like to start from the bottom up, and then I can come across and erase these faces because I don't want to accidentally erase and this stray things here. I don't want to accidentally erase any of these lines, because if I erase these lines it will take that face away, and I don't want to do that. So now it looks like my house is, you know, sitting on that property a lot better. So I can kind of look at that. Some interesting things you can do now that you've, you know, located your model. If we go into Window Model Info, we can actually see under geolocation that we now know the lat long of this property, and you know, we can clear the location, set it manually, but actually, you know, Google Earth has done us a huge favor. Not only has it given us the lot that's, or the, you know, the aerial photo, but it's also given us the ability to look at shadows. So if I go to Windows Shadows, I can see how the shadows are going to correctly be projected. And so, you know, today is, you know, in January, so I'm going to say it's the 16th today, and then I can take and turn my shadows on, and I can actually see how the shadows are going to be casted as I move back and forth, you know, in my model. Now, because the shadows are kind of casted from the aerial photography here, you know, we can kind of see that. And so let's take a look at maybe in July. Let's see what the shadows might look like in July. And as we move back and forth, so when this aerial flyover happened, it was probably, you know, maybe in the, you know, September time frame, and it was about 11 o'clock in the morning. But it's kind of nice to be able to see these shadows, because sure enough, as a kid, you know, we we had the sun, hitting the front of our house, about 1 o'clock. And then as we look at the house, the shadows, cast long in the summer. So having the ability to, to project your shadows is a nice feature of SketchUp. And because it's geolocated, it knows where it is, and because everything is measured into scale. So I think the shadows is truly a fascinating feature, that it can do it so correctly, because the geolocated model in SketchUp, and SketchUp knows where the sun is, so as we do that, we can actually look at sun studies. There's a lot of really nice tools, especially 1001-bit tools has 1001 shadows that will actually do the shadows for you, shadow maps and all kinds of things for shadow studies. So, but I'm going to turn my shadows off for now. And the last thing we're going to look at is basically taking this model and going back into Google Earth. So if I click on this tool, I could go back into Flatland if I want to and look at my house in the flat. But if I go back to Google Earth with this button, Preview Model in Google Earth, simply click on that. Now Google Earth is going to start. It's going to take my temporary model and basically move that up into Google Earth. So I'm going to simply say Close to the tooltip, and then Google Earth is going to zoom right into Raleigh, North Carolina. It's going to zoom into 4724 Lakemont Drive, and sure enough, there's my house that I grew up in, and there's not any 3D buildings around me, so to speak, but by simply navigating in Google Earth, now I can actually look at my property kind of on site, in the neighborhood I grew up in. And to me, that's just it's just a fantastic feature that I can do this. And if I had some time, I would simply add the windows to my house and the brick and all this stuff, but just trying to keep this presentation short. But you can see how Google Earth gives us the ability to to look at things as they would appear in context in the simple Google Earth navigation. So anyway, well, that about does it for today. I appreciate you joining me, and as always, if you like what you see, you can take some training classes at Next Wave Technology, and it's next-wave-tech.com. I'm Paul Benbow, and me or one of my staff can definitely take care of making sure your SketchUp needs are met. And I'm just going to discard that. And thank you so much for joining me.